The moment Karoline opened her mouth, everything changed, but not in the way she had hoped. The studio lights bathed her face in an ethereal glow, highlighting the tension in her expression. A modern-day warrior standing at the precipice of battle. The audience sat on the edge of their seats, eyes darting between her and the hosts, their anticipation thick in the air. Some admired her bravery. Others braced themselves for the inevitable backlash. "So, what you're saying, Karoline," the host said with a carefully measured smile, "is that mainstream media manipulates information." She didn't hesitate. "I'm saying that behind every headline, there's an agenda. Whoever controls the narrative controls perception. And if perception is controlled, so is reality." The statement fell into the room like a stone in a still pond. A pause. Just a fraction of a second, but enough to stretch endlessly. Then, murmurs. Some nodded in agreement, while others exchanged skeptical glances. Online, the reaction was instant. Within minutes, clips of the interview spread like wildfire. Comments flooded in. Finally, someone speaking the truth. "Who does she think she is? This woman is dangerous." Backstage, the producers scrambled. The show had just turned into a viral sensation, for better or worse. Some saw an opportunity, others, a crisis. On social media, hashtags like #Karoline censored and #truth-or-narrative began trending. Memes popped up, tweets dissected every syllable she had spoken, and both her supporters and detractors dug in for an all-out war. The debate was no longer about what she had said. It was about what she represented. Within the corporate boardrooms, the tremors of the controversy reached the highest levels. Executives debated furiously. Phones rang nonstop. Emails poured in from nervous sponsors. "Can we afford to be associated with this level of controversy?" a brand representative asked, his tone edged with anxiety. A decision loomed, one that would set off an even bigger chain reaction. And Karoline had no idea what was coming next. Karoline's phone buzzed incessantly as she stepped out of the studio. Notifications flooded her screen. Mentions, reposts, direct messages. Some praised her courage. Others condemned her audacity. But one thing was clear. She had struck a nerve. The ride home was a blur of flashing streetlights and a mind racing through possibilities. What had she just ignited? What would come next? She didn't have to wait long for an answer. The network's email arrived before she even stepped through her front door. A formal-sounding subject line. URGNT. Meeting required. Her stomach tightened. She clicked it open. "Karoline, given the reaction to tonight's segment, we need to discuss next steps. Be at the office first thing tomorrow. This is serious." She already knew what that meant. The sponsors were worried. The network was panicking. Someone had to take the fall. The next morning, she walked into the conference room, where a row of executives sat waiting. Their faces were unreadable, but the tension in the air was suffocating. "Karoline," one of them began, his voice calm but firm. "This isn't personal. It's business. The response to your comments has created significant backlash, and our sponsors are reconsidering their partnerships." She leaned forward, hands clasped. "So, what are you saying? That I should apologize? Walk it back? We're saying you need to lay low. We're suspending you from the show indefinitely." The words hit like a slap. She knew this was a possibility, but hearing it confirmed was different. She swallowed hard, refusing to let them see her break. "You're punishing me for telling the truth. We're protecting our business. And frankly, protecting you. This is bigger than just one segment. You don't understand how deep this goes." There it was. The quiet part spoken out loud. She wasn't just up against a network. She was up against a system. As she walked out, the weight of what had just happened settled on her shoulders. She had two choices: disappear like they wanted, or fight back. And Karoline had never been one to back down. What would you do in her place? Stay silent to save your career, or stand up and risk losing everything? Drop your thoughts in the comments. The news of her suspension broke within hours. Headlines flooded every major platform. Karoline Leviatt, silenced or just consequences. Journalist suspended after controversial statement. But the real battle wasn't happening in newsrooms. It was happening online. Her supporters rallied behind her, calling it censorship. Her critics painted her as reckless, irresponsible. And then came the biggest blow. Her social media accounts were flagged. Twitter locked her out, citing violations of platform guidelines. Instagram followed. YouTube demonetized her content. One by one, her platforms vanished. "They're erasing me," she muttered, staring at the error messages. She picked up her phone and called her lawyer. "This isn't just a suspension. This is a coordinated attack. We need to be smart about this," he warned. "If you lash out, they'll paint you as unhinged. But if we move carefully, we can expose what's happening." She exhaled sharply. "Then let's move carefully." Have you ever felt like someone tried to silence you? How did you fight back? Let me know in the comments. The next move had to be strategic. She reached out to contacts, journalists who still believed in integrity. Some hesitated. Associating with her now could be career suicide. But a few agreed to meet. "I have proof," she told them. Internal emails. A leaked recording of network execs admitting this was about protecting advertisers, not neutrality. "This isn't just about me. It's about how narratives are controlled." They listened, exchanging glances. One of them spoke up. "If we run this story, we'll be targeted too. Are you ready for that?" Karoline squared her shoulders. "They already took everything from me. The only thing left is the truth." The journalists nodded. The war had just begun. The article dropped like a bomb. If you're enjoying this story and want to see more deep dives like this, make sure to hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. That way, you won't miss the next explosive story we uncover. Now, let's get back to Karoline and the battle she never saw coming. Leaked emails revealed media manipulation. How one journalist became a threat to the narrative. Screenshots of internal emails spread across social media. The recording of network executives discussing how to handle Karoline was dissected on independent news channels. It was undeniable proof. Her suspension had nothing to do with journalistic integrity. It was about control. The backlash was immediate. Viewers flooded the network's pages with demands for answers. Sponsors were caught in the crossfire, forced to either distance themselves from the controversy or face public scrutiny. The network's official statement tried to contain the fire. Ms. Leviatt's suspension was a standard decision made to ensure balanced reporting. Any claims suggesting otherwise are unfounded and misleading. But it was too late. The internet had smelled blood. What do you think? Do big media companies really care about balance or just about power? Drop your thoughts below. Karoline watched it all unfold from her dimly lit apartment, phone buzzing with messages from allies and strangers alike. Some wanted to help. Others warned her to be careful. Then came the next move, one she hadn't anticipated. A former colleague, someone she had once trusted, appeared on a rival network. His tone was sympathetic, but his words were a dagger to the heart. Karoline is talented, no doubt. But let's be honest, she's always known how to work the system. She thrives on controversy. This isn't about truth, it's about her brand. She felt her breath hitch. A strategic attack, not from the network, but from someone who knew her well enough to make people doubt her intentions. She slammed her laptop shut and clenched her fists. They weren't just trying to silence her, they were trying to make her irrelevant. But if they thought she was going to disappear, they didn't know Karoline Leviatt. Karoline took a deep breath, steadying herself. If they wanted to turn the narrative against her, she had only one option: take control of the story herself. She set up a live stream. No producers, no network, no filters, just her, a camera, and the truth. The moment she went live, the viewership counter shot up. Thousands, then tens of thousands. Within minutes, the chat was a blur of comments. They tried to erase me. They tried to paint me as reckless, as self-serving. But this isn't about me. This is about who gets to decide what you see, what you hear, what you believe. She played the leaked audio clip. The chat exploded. Viewers flooded social media, demanding accountability. If your favorite journalist was silenced for speaking out, would you still trust the news? Let's talk about it in the comments. As the video spread, pressure mounted. The network's damage control failed. Sponsors distanced themselves, some pulling funding altogether. Executives scrambled, but the house of cards was collapsing. And then, something unexpected happened. An independent media company reached out. You don't need them, Karoline. You can build something real. Let's talk. The wheels started turning. Maybe this wasn't the end. Maybe it was the beginning. She had been fighting to prove she wasn't done. Now she realized she didn't have to prove anything. She just had to keep going. Karoline spent the next few days in a whirlwind of planning. The live stream had changed everything. She was no longer just a suspended journalist. She was a symbol of resistance. The backlash against the network intensified. Hashtags like #StandWithKaroline trended for days. Even rival news organizations were covering the scandal now, not to defend her, but to exploit the chaos. Despite the momentum, she knew she couldn't rely on outrage alone. Virality fades. Attention shifts. If she wanted to make a real impact, she had to build something permanent. Then came the meeting with the independent media company. It wasn't a corporate giant, but it had a growing audience hungry for truth. They laid out their offer: full creative control, a dedicated team, and a platform free from advertiser influence. In short, everything she never had before. You can do more than just expose corruption, one of the executives told her. You can change the way people consume news. The idea excited her, but it also terrified her. Could she take on an industry built on suppressing voices like hers? Was she ready for the inevitable retaliation? She knew the decision had already been made. She accepted the deal. The announcement sent shockwaves through media circles. The network scrambled to regain control of the narrative. They released another statement, this time more aggressive. Karoline Leviatt has chosen to align herself with fringe platforms that lack journalistic standards. Her departure from mainstream media speaks volumes about her true intentions. It was the oldest trick in the book: discredit the person, so no one questions the truth they reveal. Karoline laughed when she read it. They really think that's going to stop me, she muttered. She spent the next weeks assembling a team. Producers, researchers, editors, people who had grown disillusioned with the industry, just like her. Some were veterans in journalism. Others were young, hungry, and fearless. Together, they built something new: Veritas News. The first broadcast was a moment of reckoning. She sat in front of the camera, took a deep breath, and began. They tried to erase me. They failed. They tried to discredit me. They failed. Now, they have to face the truth. She laid out her vision: an independent news outlet with full transparency, where stories wouldn't be dictated by corporate interests, where journalists wouldn't be punished for doing their jobs, where the audience would be given facts, not narratives. The reaction was immediate. Viewership skyrocketed. Subscriptions poured in. Karoline had done more than survive. She had won. But she knew this was only the beginning. The establishment wasn't going to let her go that easily. She had exposed too much, and the next fight was already on the horizon. Do you think independent news can ever truly be free from influence? Let's talk about it in the comments. Karoline barely had time to celebrate the launch of Veritas News before the pushback began. The establishment wasn't about to let her rewrite the rules without a fight. The first sign of trouble came in the form of a smear campaign. Major outlets published op-eds calling her a conspiracy theorist. Pundits on television dismissed her as a disgruntled former employee who couldn't handle the consequences of her own actions. Some even went as far as to claim that she had staged the entire controversy for personal gain. She had expected this. What she hadn't expected was the legal threats. Her former network filed a lawsuit against her, citing breach of contract and defamation. The claims were flimsy, designed more to drain her resources and intimidate her than to actually win in court. But they knew something she did too. Lawsuits, even frivolous ones, could ruin people. Legal fees could bleed a person dry long before a judge ever ruled. Her lawyer was blunt. They're not trying to win this case. They're trying to break you. Karoline didn't back down. She countered with her own legal team, and she made the fight public. If they wanted to weaponize the system against her, she would expose every step of it. She released documents, emails, and behind-the-scenes footage proving how the industry operated. Each revelation was more damning than the last. The internet rallied behind her. Donations poured in for her legal defense. Independent journalists dissected the lawsuit, exposing its weaknesses. The court of public opinion turned against the network, and suddenly, they found themselves on the defensive. Sponsors pulled even more funding. Stocks plummeted. And then, the real bombshell dropped. An anonymous whistleblower, someone from deep inside the network, leaked an internal memo. The document outlined how executives had systematically suppressed certain stories, tailored coverage to fit political and corporate agendas, and actively blacklisted journalists who refused to comply. Karoline read the memo 3 times, barely believing what she was seeing. This wasn't just about her anymore. This was proof of everything she had been saying. She went live that night, holding up the document for the world to see. This isn't just one network. This is how the media works. And if they could do this to me, imagine what else they've buried. The fallout was immediate. The network's CEO was forced to resign. Government officials began calling for investigations into corporate media practices. More journalists came forward, sharing their own stories of censorship and manipulation. Veritas News became more than just a platform. It became a movement, a place where people could see the stories that mainstream outlets refused to cover, a place where the truth didn't come with a price tag. Would you trust a news platform that doesn't rely on advertisers? Or do you think all media is compromised in some way? Drop your thoughts below. As Karoline looked out at the city skyline from her office, she knew the battle wasn't over. There would always be another fight. More stories to uncover. More people trying to silence her. But they had underestimated her once, and she would make sure they never did it again. If you want more eye-opening stories like this, subscribe now and join the movement. The truth needs a voice, and together, we can make sure it's heard. See you in the next one.